I told him that. I said, I'm sorry, but I'm the one who referred you to these young screenwriters. But I wouldn't choose any of them, right? And so he said, well, can I see some of your writing? So I sent him a passage from a script that at the time I had optioned. I sent him a few scenes, and he immediately came back and said, you know, night and day I can tell what's professional caliber and what's not. So what would you charge me to write a treatment? Which is basically just like an idea, you know, that here's an idea and here's the characters and here's what would happen to them. Name your price, basically. But I was being paid at the time in Ethereum, which is another kind of the same thing as Bitcoin. So I think we came up with like 2 Ethereum. So anyway, I scratched this out, but so I like punk, right? I like punk music. I've always been involved in that scene, and I like zombies, and space, and so I came up with Metazombies in space. Well, at the time it was Metazombie, because there was only one zombie that healed. And also I told him at the time, we need to have a contract, because otherwise, you know, if there's no contract assigning what I create to you, I own it. No, we don't need a contract. You know, like that's the whole thing about the, you know, the crypto world, exactly, that you can be anonymous. Okay, so I write the treatment. He loves it.
Yes.
I love it. Will you write a pilot episode script? Okay, but, you know, without a contract, Johnny, I own the IP, the intellectual property. That's okay, I'm fine with that, right? So I write the pilot episode, and he loves it.
Yes.
And so he said, well, I want to produce it. But, you know, so I'll be the executive producer. I'll give you a budget, and I think it was around, at that point, around 5 minutes. A budget of $150K USD, and you've got complete creative control. And so in the meantime, he was going to be developing this NFT concept that he was going to sell, right? That was based on what I was creating in the pilot episode. And so as a woman, I mean, who's essentially retired, but given a decent budget and full creative control, even though I was a crypto skeptic, it was impossible to resist.
So intriguing.
So I did it. And even though I've never produced animation before, so it was a learning curve. I was learning as I was on the job, but I mean, I've been involved in production of TV programs and films and commercials and music videos. So I knew the principles of producing, just animation was a new world. But anyway, I was loving it. And then I was getting paid my little two Ethereum. And I had to learn how to flip it because I didn't want to hold crypto. So yeah, so that was fun. So we were zooming along, and he was super happy with what I was doing. In the meantime, he was working with these coders developing this NFT platform, and pushing me, we got to get this, I want to get this out. So his idea was going to do one sale of NFTs right before the pilot was released, and then one right after. So I had told him, okay, and then also he said, because I mean, I was wearing, as you said, a lot of hats. So even though I was getting, depending on how I flipped it, between 5,000 and 7,000 a month, had he been hiring all the people for all the jobs, it would have been a lot more. So he always said, okay, when it comes time to release it, we'll do a contract and I'll give you a piece of these of this project. So that was all fine and good, and I was mainly just happy to be doing this. I was totally engaged. And then one day at the end of the day, I was checking my Twitter, and I see that Johnny, because he's always posting, oh great, we've got this, and now we've got a theme song, and now we've got this and that. So I was just looking, and so he writes, oh, I'm so happy because one of the coders who's working on the NFT side of the project told me today that rather than being paid, he'd like to have a piece of the project. And that just made me really happy, that he believes in it so much. And I thought, what the fuck, how is he offering a piece of the project when I still own the IP? We haven't made any deal on that, right? And he's giving pieces of that away, and we haven't even figured out my cut or assigned he hasn't bought the IP from me or whatever, right? Like, what the hell? So I just kind of chalked it up to, whatever, right? Him not knowing or whatever, I don't know. So at that point we were communicating on Discord, and we'd had a couple Zoom meetings, so I had seen his face, but I didn't have his phone number, and then I had an email for him. And then Twitter DM, basically that's how we...
But that's how people communicate.
Yeah.
And you are in kind of a nebulous world of crypto and...
Yeah, and he was always, if I did, reach out to him, he was always very Johnny on the spot with replying, right? So it was working. Mm-hmm. And so I said, I forget whether I Discord or Twitter, one of the two. I said, Johnny, what are you doing? I just saw this tweet, how can you be giving away a piece of the project when you don't even own it yet? Oh, you're right. We need to have that meeting, and figure out your cut and all of that. So when do you want to have that? And I said, well, it's become a bigger beast than when we first started and discussed this, because, essentially I had created a franchise, so there's a theme song, there was a game idea, I'd mapped out kind of a full first season very roughly. There were all the characters, and it had become more, and I had been telling him, I don't know if selling NFTs is the way to produce further episodes. I think it might be a better path to try and sell it, to someone and produce it that way. No. He was stuck on this idea that he wanted to sell the NFTs.